I don't know. I mean, what do you know? So I guess that'd be the first part. Yeah, I think a big part of, job description and job responsibility, I mean, it's different for, every team you're a part of. I think it's definitely something that it's a moving target, and I think every head coach goes through it. You have to be where you need to be. I know that's been my path from year one to year two, now going into year three. So, yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, the things we're doing on offense, you go back, you look at year one, the goal is to keep as much of the, language and as much fundamental concepts that Dak was, we felt that we could pull forward, but more importantly have a philosophy, a structure, that I've obviously accustomed to over, almost a 30-year period here. So, yeah, so I don't really know how to answer that as far as, what are we comparing it to. But I can say this moving forward, that's where I'm going to be, from a priority, that is my priority moving into year three.
Mike, this is your first year since you were hired that Dak is under contract for sure. What does that mean for him, and at this time of the year, what does he need to be focused on?
I think like a lot of guys, it's obviously a very difficult end of the season. I think Dak has done a good job of getting away and processing it. But he's back at it. He's been in the building. Actually, he was one of I think we had one of 8 players that had postseason surgery. So he had a cleanup of his left shoulder. So it's something that needed to be done. So he's rehabbing that. But he's starting his process to get back into it. If you walk in our facility today, you'll probably see 20-25 players already there working out. So I mean, it's we have a great bunch of guys. Love the locker room. So I think as guys start to come back, into the fold, you can see the commitment that they have, and so I do feel like we have turned the page, and I think Dak has started his process. I'm sorry. To clean up of his left shoulder. No, I don't see it. It's not a concern. We have no concern. He's doing well. I'm sorry. I don't think so. I mean, Dak practiced. He practiced. Full go. Throughout. But it's just something that he felt like he needed to get cleaned up.
Who else had surgery? Say with 8 times?
Yeah. I think Chauncey Golston, Brandon Smith, DT Darius Thompson, also Donovan Wilson. So I'm trying to think who else. Well, Michael Gallup, obviously. Randy Gregory, I think you guys already know about that. So.
Mike, how much do you like India scouting combine rotation? What are your thoughts on it maybe going to depth?
Well, I mean, I love Indianapolis. I don't think you can not appreciate what Indianapolis means to the National Football League. I know personally for me as a head coach, in my time as a head coach, this is really kind of a starting line for me to get into the the draft process. From the end of the season to last week, we were full bore ahead of exit interviews, scheme evaluation, things like that. So, I don't think, last year was odd not going to Indianapolis for the combine. I mean, it's to me it's part of your process. I love the setup here. I think it's great. So I've always enjoyed coming here, and I think they do a great job hosting the combine.
Coach, how do you get Tony Pollard more involved this season?
Tony Pollard. Well, I think just like anything, we're looking at everything we do offensively. So much more is dictated on personnel groups, the timing of it. I think if you look at the start of our season, then you look at the adversity segments of our season, those are the things that, are we doing enough of this or enough of that as far as personnel groups. But Tony's a multi-positional player, so, we just got to keep spreading him out, and I think we have a tremendous attack with both him and Zeke. Oh, yeah, I think it's only natural. Absolutely. I think now, I think where Kellen is in his career, we spend a lot of time, most of our offensive conversations are really in the area of self-scout. I think like anything, I think teams, I think the league in general, the opponent scout is pretty common. I think when you look at the way, the scheme evolves each year, in our league. There's always trends that you follow. So I feel like we do a really good job of that. But, the longer I'm in this, the importance of self-scout, knowing yourself better than your opponent, it's just like anything in life. You have 100% of your time in that area of responsibility, how much you're going to spend on self-scout as opposed to opponents. So, I think as he continues to grow as a coordinator, I think it's only natural because now he has 3 years on him. He has 3 years that the book that, of how he calls things, more situational field position and, timing, adversity calls, all those things. So that's where the majority of our conversations go. I mean, he's very creative, like his creativity, scheme development, those things are. But I think now as we're going into this year, if you look at our roster last year, we had, 40 of the 84 guys were new players. So, and then you got to anticipate potentially, we're going to have a lot of young players on offense. So it's those kind of conversations of, how are we going to build this offense for this coming year? What are the stress points going to be? And because at the end of the day, going back to Tony Pollard, all these, you got to make sure you have the packages, at least in place conceptually. So when you shift gears and you hit those adversity moments during the course of a year, that you're able to lean on a Zeke or a Tony or, CD or, whoever, how this thing shakes out. So.
And looking back, do you wish you would have used Tony more last year?
I don't have any issues with how we approached the season last year. I think the start of our season is a reflection of us maximizing our off season. I think it's a reflection of a really good training camp. My 1 and 2 focuses, for this team going forward is obviously, the penalties and adversity football. So those are the 2 areas that are a primary focus for us. So as far as do we use this guy enough, that guy enough, I think it's convenient criticism. Frankly, I think if you look at our numbers of productivity, we're top in the league in a lot of categories. So, I mean, now how can we do that again? But, I'm not as interested in being the number 1 ranked offense in the National Football. We need to be the number 1 complementary offense. So, and I think we've accomplished that clearly in my second year as opposed to the first year. I think if you look at, I think our offense and defense and special teams, we're doing a much better job of playing to one another. And, so that will be the focus moving forward. No, not at all. I have great respect for the Steelers organization, just the way they've always done business. And I think as any kid that grows up at Pittsburgh, you still root for them. I mean, they're just number 2 right now on my list. So.
I don't know if this would be number 3 after penalties and adversity football, but better execution of the details of the passing game. How important focus is that going into this offseason? Kind of big picture, so more detail. How do you approach that?
I mean, definitely, Michael. I think you're always chasing that. I've never had. I could show you, run game summaries, protection summaries, and pass game summaries from the last 20 years in the NFL, and there's never been emphasis on not improving the detail. I mean, you're always trying to improve the details and the protection. I think we got to do a better job in help protections more in situational football. So we're working on that. But yes, I understand why the questions are being asked. But yes, we want to be better with our time clocks, and those come with practice. And we've gone back. We've looked at all the training camp reps. We looked at the time that Dak missed in training camp compared to with the perimeter group. So those are the things that we look at. Those are the things that we're in tune with. That's part of our evaluation. We have removed the emotion of how the season ended from our evaluation. So that's really where my mind is and how it can be better. I'm just hopeful that we can have a full CBA fulfilled offseason program, because I think that'll really benefit us, because this will be the first time, and I feel like we can get better in all those areas. The details in the passing game, maybe some more help in the protection part of it. What schemes are we going to lean on in the run game when we hit those adversity moments? So those are the things that we're probably halfway through our cut-ups right now, both offensively and defensively. So those are the things we're talking about.
Penalties, how do you balance not overcoaching penalties and not having guys play with an edge? What's the right way to achieve your goal of improving penalties?
Well, I mean, I believe in the format that we use. How we emphasize it. How we teach it. Penalty prevention. The individual focus and the techniques part of it. That will be heightened. This is a normal for me. In the offseason, you look at all the different things you need to look on. If you're not as good in red zone, well, guess what? We're going to practice more red zone. If we're not as good in, third down, then we're going to crank it up another 2 or 3%. So, but you have to give up something. So you're going to give up normal down and distance reps. I think really being in touch with that in today's climate. I mean, I'm not making excuses. Your time with your team is less than it's ever been, and I know it's my time as a head coach. So where are you going to spend that time? And definitely penalties will be, we will talk and emphasize penalties more than we have in the past. But the process of how we break them down pre-snap, and then you have the post-snap, the combative, because my normal process of penalties, and I think my time in the league as a head coach reflects that. Sometimes you want to, sometimes there's a risk of being higher in penalties when you want to be more combative, more get your play style consistently for your whole team. I think that's a process that what we've come out of year one into year two was emphasized for us because our play style wasn't as consistent at the fever pitch that we wanted it throughout our team. And with that comes more combative penalties. History will tell you that. That's been my experience as a head coach. So those are, some things that are accepted part of doing business, ever how you want to write it. But the pre-snap and the discipline penalties, we have to be much better at. We did not, by no means, did we hit the target there. So I got to coach it better. We got to emphasize it better. It'll definitely be a heightened point. Like I said, the penalty breakdowns, we've been through them all. But that and the adversity of football, game situational football, end of games, all those things, which we have committed a lot of time to. But we need to be better in those situations.
Mike, with the time that you get for your rookies and your
Yeah.
versus free agents now, when you don't even get to decide very quickly
Yeah.
spend their money, what's the comfort level between bringing in a guy that we've gotten to know through the draft process versus free agent?
Well, I think it's like anything. There's always a comfort level based off of how much interaction you have with somebody. And I mean, and obviously, I think not only that, but what is the history that this particular player, wherever he's coming from, has with your staff, or the exposure that your scouts or your scouting department have. I think all those things factor. I think the way our business has evolved has been continuous, particularly through this pandemic and things like that. I think a lot of good things can come out of this type of operation. I think the roster development and structure that the pandemic has produced for us as a league, I think is tremendous. I'm all for staying with the large roster. I think we had 84 players in our building, average throughout the whole year last year. I thought that was a tremendous environment that we were able to create with our players. I think it's just like anything in this business. You just kind of roll with it, and that's just part of how we do business today.
Can you talk about Cedric Wilson's development?
I'm sorry, say it again? Yeah. I mean, Cedric, obviously just been here with him the 2 years, and I know he was, someone that has taken some big jumps in his early years. Love him as a player, love him as a person, extremely professional. Obviously growing up in with his father playing in the league, I think there's such a steady, calm confidence about him. There's nothing that you can ask Ced to do that he just steps right in. He's a very instinctive, aware, natural football player, both, obviously offensively, but, he does a lot of the little things for us on special teams too. So, obviously Cedric and all of our free agents, the goal is to try to get those guys back. And I think anytime you're fighting to get all your free agents back into your locker room, I think that's the place you want to be in, and definitely Cedric's one of those guys. Give that water. I'm sorry, say that again? Well, I wouldn't say we had a conversation. I'll just say this about, the narrative. I don't think it's it's a narrative I don't want to be a part of. I don't think anybody want to be a part of it on either side of the fence. Fairness to Sean, he's being asked the questions, but, nothing good comes out of that. But I think you do need to understand that I get to spend a lot of time with Jerry, both as the owner and as the GM. So in our conversations, when we talk about the partnership between a head coach and a GM, those are the conversations him and I have. So the strength of the partnership, what's in front of us, short-term plan, long-term plan. Obviously, we got some big decisions here to make with our roster, all those things. So, I mean, he addressed it. We laughed about it and moved on, and that's really where it is. So I think it's something for externals to conversate about. But I don't see it as any type of topic or anything that gets in the way of winning. And so any of these narratives that you do need to speak on, I think that's where I draw the line. And but I also have the benefit and the relationship and the ability to speak with Jerry on all these things. And I would say our relationship's very open and direct, and we've had a lot of conversations about everything that we're doing, and I think that's extremely healthy. It's definitely the way I like to do things. I mean, I do it from my position every year. There's not an individual that I don't interact with that touches the football team that does not go through an exit interview, both on both sides of the fence. And that's all about creating, developing, and maintaining a championship culture. And so that's really the facts of how we operate.
How do you keep the narratives out of the locker room?
Well, I'm counting on you, Todd, to get that done. So, step up. I think I'll say this about we have a tremendously strong locker room culture. I can't say enough about this group of men that we have, just the way it all came together, the connection. You could feel it in the offseason program last year because, the newness was obviously evident because we had a lot of new people in the room. But I give the veteran leadership a ton of credit. I mean, I love the way the rookie class has come in and just have hooked in there and kept their head down in the beginning. And then you can see some of our young guys now have stepped up and, are in leadership positions. They're growing. I mean, look what Mike has done in his first year. Look what Trayvon's done. So we have that growth of young, obviously, players, but their leadership and their personalities are moving forward, and then we got an outstanding group of veterans. So I really like the dynamics of our locker room. It's an extremely healthy locker room, and I think we already have 20-plus players that are there working out daily already. So I think that speaks volumes about what we have going on right now.
All right, thanks, Coach.
One last one on the shoulder, just to clarify.
Yeah.
When Dak suffered this condition or injury,
I just know it bothered him. It was something that was it was sleeping and things like that. Was more of an irritant. So I think just like anything, I know the importance of Dak Prescott. I think it's important for players to speak on their body and their injuries, but it's something that he just felt like he needed to get cleaned up. Left shoulder, non-throwing shoulder. Yeah, get that non-throwing shoulder. So,
All right, thank you, Coach.
All right, thank you.